Alright, now we're going to go through basic self-stretching for the hands. Going to start with the general muscles to the forearm and the wrist, and we'll slowly move down to the tips of the fingers. Some of the forearm muscles, flexors and extensors, cross the elbow joint. So in order to get those fully involved in the stretch, you need to keep your elbow straight. So we're going to start there. Actively extending your wrist and fingers, slowly down. One thing I want you to notice here, a couple things actually, is that I am getting my fingers of my left hand all the way down to the palm as I assist myself with the stretch, as opposed to assisting from the top. The importance to that is to make sure that the joints arc in a very natural way and that there is no stress or strain on the ligaments. This does a very good job at keeping it straight to the muscles. Now conversely, I can wrap up that front line of fascia by changing my palm to the up direction before I stretch. And as you can all see, I burnt myself cooking a couple days ago. Then we're going to go towards flexion exercises. Notice how I'm holding on the metacarpal heads to get a little bit of traction and the fullest stretch I can. Flip it over this way and come back. Now, to avoid any potential compression into the carpal tunnel, my stretch as I move my flexors, I'm lifting up towards the sky, not towards me. That creates a proper arc in that tunnel so that the tendons are unlikely to compress the nerve. Then I'm going to allow my elbow to bend, and I'm going to go through the same exact stretches. This will place emphasis on the shorter flexors of the forearm. Always actively extending my fingers backwards. More often than not, stretching the extensors of the forearm, this part of the forearm, is really more about symptom relief than actually fixing the problem. It's important to remember 9 out of 10 times the flexors are going to be overly dominant and thereby putting pressure on the extensors. And the end result, as far as getting healthy again, is going to have a lot to do with strengthening the extensor muscles. So now I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to begin with my fingers extended, and then I'm going to extend my wrist. This is going to provide a deeper stretch directly around the carpal tunnel. Fingers extended, then wrist extends. Flip it over, do the same thing. Fingers extended, wrist extends. Notice how I use my thumb underneath to brace the phalangeal joints to make sure that I don't stress the ligaments and that I get a big, deep stretch through the palm and around the carpal tunnel. Then I'm going to do almost the exact same thing here, but the way I'm going to change it a little is as I get into flexion, I'm going to have my fingers of my left hand cupping the fingers of my right hand and start working in that direction. And I will repeat it here as well. The assist from the heads of my metacarpals is still going up towards the ceiling to avoid compression on the carpal tunnel. Next, I'm going to start with wrist extension. I'm going to get all the way down into my palm and start cranking on the fingers, slowly but surely, extending, extending, extending. emphasizing now the palm and into the carpal tunnel even further. Do the same thing down here. Keep the whole palm in the stretch so that I have pressure equally distributed along all the joints with the emphasis of my pull right there. Now I'll move into the thumb a little bit. I'm going to tuck the thumb right in my fist and start moving downward. Now when you do this, make sure that your thumb isn't passively there and this is the movement. Make sure you're making your thumb move each time. You won't see that because it's enclosed by my fist. But I am actively contracting these muscles as I do the movement. I'm going to do a couple of variations here. Straight down the middle. And then turn in and straight downward again. And turn out and down. This is going to emphasize different aspects of the tissue. Now we're going to advance into each finger. Before I work the flexors, I'm going to grip all the way down to the bottom knuckle, and I'm going to start coming up there. If you are fairly tight, it's a good idea to start with your wrist in a neutral position. If you're fairly loose already, go ahead and move into an advanced movement. So basic movement, wrist is in neutral, and full flexibility is 90 degrees. So as you approach that 90-degree mark, start adding a more advanced movement to what you do. Ideally, I recommend going from finger to finger to finger, repeated with all of these, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 repetitions on all of the stretches we've been doing. Next, we're going to start working the extensors a little more directly in relation to the fingers, and keeping the finger straight, working it down towards the palm. The push from my hand is going directly in line with the tips of my finger to create a little bit of traction in the joint and avoid straining or stressing my ligaments. As that loosens up further, I'm going to curl into a ball with each finger and work it like that. Slowly but surely working every little bit of all of the extensor tendons all the way to the tips of the fingers. Now a little bit more with the thumb. Before you do any stretches with your thumb, or any fingers for that matter, if you notice they're rotated, de-rotate it first. If you can't do it on your own power, use your hand. Grip the whole thumb like a little motorcycle throttle and turn it so the thumbnail is pointing towards the sky. And then open up. Most of my pressure comes from the very bottom here on the metacarpal. I'm not pulling so much on the phalanges as the metacarpal. Once you've worked that well, you're going to take that just about end position, not pulling yourself into a stretch, just pull yourself to right before the stretch. And then I'm going to push with this part of my hand right into the pad of my thumb, right into my thenar eminence, and I'm going to start bringing it over the back of my hand. I often find it helpful to have a flat surface to rest on. Then I can relax my hand while I activate my thumb muscles. Coming over the top. Especially for those of us who are gripping a lot all day long, this gets exceptionally tight. Very good stretch for that. And lastly, I'm going to bring my thumb, should go right over to the middle knuckle, but alas, I'm a little tight these days. That's the direction you're going. That's your goal, is to slowly stretch the thumb until it gets over there. In particular, a lot of people are unstable through these ligaments, so make sure when you push, you have equal pressure below as above the ligament, otherwise you may stress your ligament. So most of my pressure is coming from the head of the metacarpal as I assist myself in this stretch.